back to Happy Albacore Homestead. Today is part 1 of how to make blackberry wine. And before we get started, I just want to tell you a super quick story. About 10 months ago, somebody responded in a comment to one of my other videos and shared a story about how her mom, who has since passed on, God rest her soul, and she was missing her mom, and she asked if I could do a video on how to make blackberry wine. So, Amy Undercoffer Miller, this video is dedicated to your mom. If I can figure out how to tag you somehow in this video, I will, so you can hear your shout out and watch this, and I hope it brings back happy memories of your mom. And let's get started. You're gonna need blackberries. You can use fresh or frozen. I'm doing a 5-gallon batch of wine today, and so I am using 20 pounds of frozen blackberries. I picked these on my property last summer. It's March now, so I picked these last September. They smell divine. They're in perfect condition, no freezer burn or anything like that. When I froze them, I washed them, laid them flat to freeze them, and then I put them into a vacuum sealed bag, and that prevents freezer burn. Also, it prevents them from mashing up and sticking together. So great way to freeze your blackberries for future use if you like to go out and harvest your blackberries. You are also going to need a very large bucket. If you're doing a 5-gallon batch like me, you're going to want a bucket that is 6.5 gallons, because we're also, in addition to the blackberries, we'll be adding other ingredients that take up a lot of space. I also recommend that you use one of these giant mesh bags. This one is an extra large, and if you want, I can put a link down in the description box on where you can obtain one. I also have a very long spoon, a hydrometer, a couple of measuring spoons that we're going to need, a measuring cup. This is a wine thief, and you put it in your bucket to capture wine to use the hydrometer, and we'll just be using that basically at the very end of the video. I'll show you how to read a hydrometer. I have some pH test strips here. I like to check the pH level, the acid level in my wine, just so that I know what it is. We will be adding acid blend to this batch because the acid level in blackberries is not high enough to just go without it. Because blackberry wine obviously is going to be quite dark, we might not be able to see, but we'll try anyway. Okay, you'll also need some Pectic Enzyme, some Campden tablets, some acid blend, and some Yeast Nutrient. You will need sugar, a lot of sugar. This recipe calls for like 11 plus pounds of sugar. I'll give you the exact measurements, and I also will put the recipe for a 5-gallon batch down in the description box. You can, or I'll do a 1-gallon. Either way, you can either make the recipe bigger or make it smaller depending on what I eventually put down there. And lastly, you'll need something to cover your bucket with. You can either use like a flat lid that goes on the bucket that has a hole in the middle where you can put a airlock in, or you can use a cotton towel. I'm using the cotton towel. I think it breathes easier that way, and also this is going to be really full, and if this gets wet or if it bubbles up too much, then I can just replace it, as opposed to having it spit out the top of the airlock and it gets gummed up. And anyway, I find that this is just easier and just works better for me. But either way, you can pick your method of covering it, but you do want to make sure that it is covered in some way. This time of year around here, we don't have a lot of bugs or flies or anything running around, but I do have dogs, and I do not want dog hair wine. Before we get into the process, let me remind you that everything you use needs to be sanitized. I use Easy Clean. There's lots of different kinds of wine sanitizing solution out there. That's just what I have. I got like a huge bag of it, and I haven't tried any of the others, but lots of ways to sanitize. Just make sure that you sanitize your equipment. Anything that touches the wine, including the bag, the mesh bag, also has to be sanitized. Anything that touches the wine, sanitize it ahead of time. And you don't want to waste. You know, I spent days and days and hours picking these blackberries and, you know, binding the wounds of my thorn pricked fingers. So despite the fact that that was super dramatic, you don't want to waste your food, you don't want to waste your time. So just go ahead and do the step of sanitizing your equipment and you will not regret that. Let's move you over here. We're gonna put this bucket on the floor so you can see exactly what it looks like putting everything in. My blackberries, I took them out of the freezer this morning. It's afternoon now and they're partially thawed, but not completely thawed, and that's fine. You can put them into your bucket frozen. I prefer to have them at least a little bit thawed out first so I can start mashing them up. Obviously, if it's frozen, you're gonna have to wait a while before you can do the mashing process. Now, this particular recipe calls for 70 cups of water, and I can almost guarantee with I don't think we're gonna fit 70 cups of water in here, and really, you guys, it's not a problem. So if you look at my recipe and you go through this video and you're like, oh, she was only able to get like 45 or 50 cups in there, you can put in however much water you want. In fact, if you don't want to use water, you don't have to. It's completely up to you, but that's what this recipe calls for. So I'm gonna do my best to get as much water in there as I can. The first thing we're gonna do is put the mesh bag inside the bucket. And mine has a little cincher here, so I'm gonna cinch that up just so that hopefully I don't get any of the solid fruit in the actual bucket itself. And now the fruit and all of the juice that might be in there goes into the mesh that's in the bucket. This is kind of heavy, so I'm sorry if this looks weird. As you can see, this bucket is already 3/4 of the way full, so definitely spot on with not getting 70 cups of water in there, especially when we need 11 pounds of sugar. Let's start mashing this up. I have a potato masher here I'm using. There's probably a better way to do this, but it's what I have, so it's what I'm gonna do. And I do still have a lot of frozen berries in here. So this process may take me a little bit. I will come back to you after I feel like I've got some good smashing done. Now that it's all smashed down, I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's just right at the halfway point in the bucket. And what we're gonna do now is tie up the mesh bag, cinch it up nice and tight. And I'm also going to wrap it around and tie a knot in the top as well. And that will hopefully keep it from opening up as we're agitating it with the stirring of the other ingredients. At this point, we're gonna add some water and some sugar. If you wanted to, you could just plop all of that right into your bucket. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently because of such a high volume of pulp that we have. I wanna make sure that I get the sugar in and then add as much water as possible from the recipe. The way I'm gonna do that is by putting the sugar and some water in together and letting the sugar go ahead and dissolve so that 100% of the sugar goes in, right? Because it can take up quite a bit of volume. And if we go ahead and get it dissolved first, that's gonna help us with our ratio. Now, this recipe calls for 11 1/4 pounds of sugar. I'm using granulated sugar, and there's not like a real specific way because granulated sugar weighs a little bit more than a different course of sugar. So we're just gonna weigh it, but typically, just for your own future reference, approximately 2 cups is a pound of sugar. But if you want to be like super accurate, just weigh it. I have my kitchen scale out here, and I'll put my measuring cup on, hit the tare button, which will put it back to 0. Okay, here we go. And 2 pounds is basically 4 cups of sugar, even with the granulated, so there we go. Kind of answers the question from earlier. 2 pounds of sugar in here. I just have a little scratch pad over there so I can keep track. Okay, now we just need 1 1/4 pound of sugar, so we're in the home stretch. That's a lot of sugar, you guys. Okay, that's 11 pounds, 11 1/4 pounds of sugar, and we're gonna start measuring in the water to get this dissolved. We'll keep track of the water the same way we kept track of the sugar, so at least we can figure out how much water this will actually hold, because y'all know it's not going to be 70 cups. Let me clean up my mess and then we'll do the water together. Let's start with the first 4 cups. I'll let you know how many I add and I'll show you what it looks like as we get to the stirring part. Well, we have 28 cups of water in here, and so let's just give it a good stir. And I'm not gonna lie, I used warm water because I still have to make dinner tonight, and I'm hoping to get this batch of wine kind of done before I have to start cooking dinner. And it's perfectly okay, guys. You can use cold water, warm water, doesn't really matter. Warm water will help it dissolve faster. So I'm just gonna give this a stir for a good long time until it is completely dissolved, and then we will move on to the next step. I'm really glad I used the warm water because this dissolved super fast. I'm gonna do something that if you're a watcher of my other wine videos, you haven't seen me do, but like I said, again, I'm doing things a little bit differently this time. I'm gonna go ahead and put in the other ingredients that I need into this pot so that I can really get them stirred in well. I find that in the bucket, when I'm using actual like plant material in the mesh bag, that I can't really, you know, get in there and stir super well to get the other ingredients mixed in as well as I would like. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them into this, and then all of this is gonna go into the bucket, and I will show you that process. I'm feeling fairly confident that I didn't overdo the water. I hope I don't embarrass myself later. Let's go ahead. We're gonna do the yeast nutrient first. We need 5 teaspoons of this. Next, we'll do the acid blend, and we need 2½ teaspoons. And we'll move on to the pectic enzyme, and we also need 2½ teaspoons. Let me get a little baggie for the Campden tabs. Last ingredient is the Campden tabs, and we need 5 of them since we're doing a 5-gallon batch. You need 1 for each gallon of wine. I like to put them in a baggie and then crush them. They're not hard to crush, but you don't want to throw them in whole. I just use the bottle. Make quick work of it. And then just put that in. Next, we'll just give this a super good stir and make sure it's fully stirred in. This might take a while. It can clump a little bit, but I'm really hopeful that this will make it easier than trying to stir these ingredients in after the mesh bag is in there and all of that. So I'm gonna work on this for a minute, make sure all the chunks are out and it's nicely incorporated, and then I will show you the next step. I feel like this looks really good. Everything's pretty well incorporated. Just a quick pro tip though, I'm kind of thinking that if I had just mixed like all of these other ingredients in just like a little bit of water and, kind of stirred it up, it would have, incorporated a whole lot faster, kind of like, and if you guys have ever made a roux. So let's go ahead and put this into our bucket and move on to the next steps. As you may be able to see, I did squish that down just a little bit. You can see the juice is starting to creep up in some areas. That's really what we want that to look like. And now we're gonna put in our pot of sugar and other ingredients and give that a good stir. Well, I'm pretty glad I did not put more water in that main pot. So I'm gonna give this like a super good stir. And after I do that, we will go ahead and add water all the way up as far as I think I can get away with. That is pretty well stirred in. I'm gonna start with 4 cups of water and just kind of keep going from there, and we'll see how much more water we can get into this bucket. I definitely want to leave like at least a little bit of room on the top for the bubbles that are gonna come up once the fermenting starts. Okay, you guys, I feel like I put in another 20 cups of water and it's pretty full. I know it's gonna bubble up later and I really don't want like a ginormous mess to clean up. So just so you know, instead of 70 cups of water, we used 48 cups of water. I could maybe put in a little bit more, but I think this is going to be just fine. It's not going to ruin the wine or anything like that. You don't have to have 70 cups. I've made some batches of wine where I don't even use any water at all, and they've turned out beautiful. So I think I'm just going to leave this here for right now. And it's pretty well stirred in. As you can see, like there's a little bit of water, maybe you can, or not water, but air in the little bag that's in here. You might be able to see it when I stir it. I think I'm just gonna leave this alone. Everything is really well incorporated. Why don't we go ahead and check the acid level and also check the hydrometer, and then we can be done for today. I think we'll go ahead and check the acid level first. I'm not sure that we'll be able to see anything, but it's worth a try. lots of bubbles in there. So I would say we're probably right around 4. It's kind of tough with the redness of the berries. That's why these don't work as great. You could get a digital one, which would be more effective, but in any event, we're fine in our acid range, and I know we are because we use the acid blend, but it's just fun to know. Next thing we're gonna do is grab our wine thief and our hydrometer, get some of this wine into this container here. Oh dear. I got my little buddy stuck in here. Oh, there he goes. One more time. Okay. So now that we have some wine in here, I'm gonna really want to try to get a good amount in there. And you want to take this and put it in the top and give it a good spin. I know it's not a really good angle for you to see, but I'm gonna spin it and I'll tell you what it says. I will need to clean off the outside because I can't see it through the foam. Now we can see it a little bit better. You want to read your hydrometer right where the liquid starts to curve down at the bottom. I have some foam here, so I'm just gonna kind of guesstimate, and was hoping for a dry wine, but might be more in the dessert wine arena, but I guess in that case we won't have to back sweeten it, will we? Okay, you guys, last thing we want to do is just go ahead and cover it with a cotton cloth, and we're just going to let it sit here for 24 hours. Now, I'm not going to show you a video of the very next step, so make note of this. It's extremely important. You want to add 1 package of a yeast, a wine yeast, you guys, not a bread yeast. You want to add that to this and stir it in after 24 hours. Here's the wine yeast that I use, and I'm just gonna sprinkle the entire thing. You only need 1 packet. 1 packet works whether you're doing 1 gallon or 5 gallons. If you're doing something bigger than that, you'll need more yeast. But it does work for up to 5 gallons. And tomorrow, right at this exact time, I will take this cover off, sprinkle in the yeast, and give it a good stir, and then I will cover it up and leave it for 7 days. That was the last step for part 1 of how to make blackberry wine. Amy, if you're watching, love you. Hope this helps you to remember your mom and just really honor her. And thank you to everyone else who watched this video. If you have any questions, comments, please do leave them down below. I get to everybody, and I really just appreciate you guys. Of course, as you know, if you would like to become a member and support me, that option is available on my main page. And if you're interested in any of the herbal supplements that I make, including this amazing face serum, check out my Etsy channel. It is down in the description box, and I will see you guys for part 2. Bye!